asked me to tell some story about Noel. In order to understand Noel, I think you have to understand more of the time. So I'll start with my mother. She was born in 1900 in a rural central Ohio. At age 22, she married my father, who had just got his associate's degree from River Forest, Chicago, and they moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. After 1 year, she gave birth to a little girl who, following a difficult delivery, which forceps were used, and the baby's head was injured, and the baby died at 1 week. They then moved to Decatur, Indiana, where a German community where they lived across the street from the church and the school. They had a garden. She had close friends. She was able to have a 4-H girls club where she taught sewing and canning and things she had learned in 4-H, and she was a very happy person. Carolyn was born there, but she was a rather irritable baby. Of course, my mother was probably very anxious after having just lost the baby. 2 years later, I was born. By then, my mother was a very happy, contented person, and I became a very happy, good-natured baby. She claims I'm the only one that she was able to nurse. They had a garden there. They were just very happy, but my father wanted to get his bachelor's degree, so he had to move. And they moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and lived in about 60th Street in the German community in Cleveland. This was becoming integrated and wasn't a safe place to live. So they lived out in 120th Street in a Hungarian community. My mother was surrounded by Hungarian-speaking neighbors and had no close friends there. She had charge of 2 little girls, became pregnant with Kathleen, had gallbladder attacks, and 2-year-old Margene was hard to keep track of, so she was taken to Central Ohio and lived with her Aunt Laura. That was the beginning of my second home. And Kathleen, and during that time, my dad canvassed the area to get more children for school. He developed tuberculosis that came off.
I know.
He developed, Kathleen had a positive TB test all her life because of that. And I just was completely missed it. My dad spent a summer living on a farm and taking the medicine that they now give dogs for heartworm. I can't think of the name of it. And he was able to survive the TB, but it became a pain for him the rest of his life because he had the lesion. Noel was then born in 1934, and he was also a large baby and had a forceps delivery, which worried my mother, but he survived. He had allergies, and they ended up giving him soy milk, which was really pretty cruddy stuff. But he survived on it. And in 1935, I believe, is when we got our very first radio. And before that time, my mother was totally in charge, 24/7, of all these children. But my dad was really a very busy person. So, in the Great Depression hit us about 1933, and my dad was laid off. And we survived in Cleveland, and my dad had substituted Lorraine for the Lutheran school there. And when the teacher in Lorraine, the superintendent in Lorraine needed a big man to take care of the boys who didn't get along well in high school because they couldn't get jobs, they couldn't get in the service, and they didn't want to learn. So he started what was sort of like a vocational school with 18 boys in South Lorraine. In 1937, we moved to Lorraine. My dad's mother died in February of that year, and these boys had a sit-down strike in the bathroom for substitute, and also pickpocketed the substitute. They were a rough group of boys. But when World War II started, they could all get in the service, and my dad got into regular teaching at Crawford. Well, anyhow, during these years, before we got radio, my mother was totally in charge, 24/7, about our total learning, and she used to teach us number concepts, not just names for numbers. So when we would need some potatoes for supper, she'd say, go get 2 3s and 1 more. We could count to 3 at age 3, and that's how we learned our number concepts. And so when she was canning these, this is the story I originally started to tell about Noel. When she was canning these peaches, they were very ripe and very sweet. He developed diarrhea. And she asked him, well, how many did you eat? He said, only 3 2s and 1 more. So this is, and Gail also had a concept number. When we sat down at the table, the canned peaches, if there was an extra peach, my dad would get the 3rd peach. And Gail was 3, and he sat down, and we got to the table, and the dessert peach was 3 peaches was at his place. And Mother said, those are Dad's. And my dad said, oh, let him have them. And Gail said, but I'm 3. And my dad said, that's fine, let him have it. The next time we had sweet cherry, and he had 3. And Gail looks at him and kind of, but I am 3, he says. So this is how we learned our number concept. And all of us really became good in that.